So a little bit of brief background on this. We started this connected vehicle security program with Jeff Davis in 2017. We had a task force. We did a white paper, and that exposed us to a lot of issues and challenges. And then we got really embedded into the whole connected vehicle ecosystem. And since then, we have had transitions in different roles and companies and all that. But this team has stuck together, and I just wanted to make sure that this comes to the front. We talked about smart cities yesterday, and connected vehicles and the autonomous vehicles are basically the heart of that we started. So that sets the premise. And over to you, Bob, to take this panel ahead.
Thanks very much, Val. I'd like to make this as interactive as possible, so please, you all have mics which are live. Just direct them to yourself to ask any questions at any time. I've got a series of questions for our excellent panel. Please introduce each of yourselves. Julius, Stephen, and Jeff.
Julius Smith from the Dallas Rapid Transit, currently CIO of CISO.
Steve Johnson with HNTB Corporation, program manager for the Tampa THEA CV pilot. We got a $25 million grant from USDOT to be one of 3 pilot deployments to test. And we're the one out of the 3 that are using private vehicles. We have 1,100 private citizens that we installed the technology in their cars, plus 10 transit buses and 10 streetcars.
They give me my own. My name is Jeff Davis. I am the global head of smart transportation innovation and development for BlackBerry.
Thank you. So we'll start with a basic question here. Stephen, please tell us what the difference is between an autonomous vehicle and a connected vehicle.
Autonomous vehicles, an autonomous vehicle is a vehicle that has some level there are 5 different levels, although I think they now run 0 to 4. They keep changing stuff on us. Yeah, is it 0 to 5 now? Which 0 means nothing, by the way, no autonomy. But that was our baseline. So there is a control system in the car that is automated and can do some functions without the driver. And of course, by the time you get to level 4, there is no driver interaction, but there may be a driver for taking over in an emergency. Level 5, there's no pedals, there's no steering wheel, all of that's removed. So that's what an autonomous car is. But as Jeff said in an earlier session, there may be vehicles that have some lower level of autonomy already, and most of us are already driving those without realizing it. Adaptive cruise control is an example. My wife's last car, I've had it for a while, she just got adaptive cruise control, and she said, "The car threw on the brakes today, it's trying to kill me." I said, "No, you were following too close with your cruise control on." So there are cases that the cars will take over or take some kind of action. That's autonomy. Connected vehicles in the purest sense, which it was when we started this pilot, is a communication. It's on a dedicated spectrum called dedicated short range communications. Because it's dedicated and short range, we're talking 300 meters or less, there's practically 0 latency, and 10 times per second that vehicle is broadcasting its current position, its current heading, trajectory, speed, along with what we call the CRUM, or the path history over the last couple seconds. The algorithms can then predict where that car is going to be over the next few seconds in the future, along with every other car that's broadcasting similar information. It also is connected to the traffic signals and gets information like the signal phase and timing, a very accurate GPS map of the intersection with which lanes are open, gives you the ability to revoke lanes or close them for maintenance. And so the difference is the cars are talking to each other and connected. Automated, they're actually taking actions, and connected doesn't currently. But now that it's been tested, we're putting them together to improve the autonomous safety.
Great, thanks very much, David. Excellent answer. And another foundational question for you, Jeff. Uh, uh, why should society be taking the risk of connecting and automating when the consequences can be so severe for human health and criminal consequences?
So I think that, the very simple answer to that is to save lives. How many people can tell me who knows about the Boeing crashes that have happened over the past year? Right? Everybody can raise their hand. Everybody's seen it on the news. How many people died in those crashes? Somewhere around there, a little bit north of 350, right? So 350 people died. Worldwide, do you know how many people died in car accidents last year? 1.5 million. 1.5 million. In the United States, 40,000. That's typical average. It goes up and down. It's getting a little bit better as we're putting more safety features in the cars. As you see, a lot of very dedicated people, like the gentleman sitting to my right here, who do quite a bit with working on the infrastructure and trying to make safer roads and trying to build those things out. But quite honestly, it's about moving the needle of actually stopping a lot of these traffic deaths. When you start connecting a vehicle, you now feed that vehicle information from other vehicles. You feed that vehicle information that comes from the infrastructure. That vehicle, even at lower levels of automation, where the driver is still in the loop, has advanced warning of things, can take different actions. Cities and states at the very highest level with these things can then start to reroute traffic, can make things safer, can look at intersections and how they make intersections safer. It's all about taking incremental steps to try to remove that danger.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Julius, what would you say would be the top 3 challenges for the transportation sector?
Within transit, I would say mobility as a service in regions is a challenge because of congestion is one major challenge. The second would be the collaboration. As you know, you see the transportation network companies all over, the Uber Lyfts, the scooters, the bicycles, integrating that into the traffic and the transportation, which in some instances it causes more congestion. So for public transportation, that's one way. We have partnered with the TNCs to try to manage that, better manage that. And then thirdly is the demand for the last mile being completed, the demand for regional transportation is a challenge, because the expectation is a microwave expectation that they want the vehicles now. So the predictive analysis comes into play. It is a major challenge that we're having to deal with. Real-time prediction.
That's great, Julius. Thank you. Stephen, how has the threat surface evolved?
I'm glad you asked. Is somebody back there to put up a slide? He's going to get it for me. I actually talked about that in a presentation in DC last week, and I anticipated this question, so I brought the graphic with me. But the current or the historical threat surface to a transportation or a road operator and their business systems that also are connected traditionally has been just 5 or 6 things. Their business systems, and then the operation, which businesses email, those things that you would communicate with typically. And then the other things for the operational networks has been their intelligent transportation systems, which is what Jeff and I primarily specialize in. Tolling system, which could include some financials, traveler information center, where we put messages up on the signs over the roadway, accident ahead, left lane closed or right lane closed. All of those systems connect back to a traffic management center. And that was basically it. But as you can see, when we wedged in the connected and autonomous vehicle into that circle that we need to protect with our confidentiality, integrity, and availability, off of that is a whole new threat surface that has exponentially grown the threat points. Financial transaction networks from things like smart cities, smart parking, the tolling systems is happening inside, that interaction is now inside the vehicle. The OEM supply chain, they talked about that earlier. Well, now we have to worry about all of those auto manufacturers' supply chain because that car is now connecting to our local traffic cabinet for that interaction as a connected or an autonomous vehicle. And the infotainment system in that car, which is probably the least secure thing in the whole world because they want to let everything in. You want your satellite radio, your weather reports, movies now, streaming media into the car. Well, it's just an open door to let all of those things in. And now at our connection point, because those are such an easy way to get in, the average car on the road right now has 50 computer processors in that vehicle. The brake sensors talk to the CPU and different systems, and they're all over a cellular network, which is wide open. There's no security in the vehicle. Now, we're working on that. Yeah. And it all goes to that single point on our network, and we have to now guard against the whole world instead of what traditionally was a very private transportation network.
Can I just add to what he was saying with that? So there are a bit of the challenges, as he talked about, when you look at a vehicle itself and how it's built and how it's starting to build. The number of ECUs is starting to change. How we're communicating within the vehicle itself is starting to change. Everything used to go through the CAN bus. We are trying to do what we can to bifurcate the CAN bus, although that's still not going to be completely safe until you can air gap that one, that one, sensitive point right there. Probably one of the biggest things facing it from the automobile side, and let me use automobile as a general descriptor, because let's just call it OEMs. And your trains are made by OEMs, your buses are made by OEMs, your trucks are made by OEMs, your cars are made by OEMs, motorcycles, so on. Everything that goes on the road or on rails that actually moves is manufactured by an OEM. An OEM doesn't actually make anything. They gather groupings of parts off the supply chain like he was talking about. And this is a very different problem than they've ever had to deal with in the past. Everything has very much been a very engineering-focused problem for them. Cybersecurity is not an engineering-focused problem. Engineers have a part to play in it. Technology has a part to play in it. But as we learned from the young individuals that were up here before, there's thinking individuals that are sitting behind the other side, and trying to learn and figure out the systems and figure out the vulnerabilities in the systems. So every time you fix something, you create another vulnerability. This is a very different and new idea to this OEM industry, and it's a very hard idea. And I'll let the gentleman to my right actually speak about it better, because they can actually talk about it from the infrastructure side much better than I can. But there's a battle not just with the infrastructure and the differing degrees of technology and legacy technology that's involved in it. You've also got an additional battle to how well are cities and states actually funded to go ahead and handle this. Transportation is the thing that everybody uses and nobody pays attention to it. It's all around you, it's always happening, and nobody pays attention to the fact that it's there. And your DOTs get funded that way as well.
That's great, Jeff. Thanks. And yes, Julius has got a presentation for us. Please feel free to put up your hand if you have any questions. Take it away, Julius.
Thank you. Hello again. So across the region, we cover 13 cities, and with that transportation, we do have connected vehicles. We have a rolling stock of light rail, the longest light rail in North America. We have streetcars and also buses, paratransit vehicles, police, and a police department, all connected. We're moving 220,000 riders a day. So we just opened up the Silver Line just last week from here, Plano, and it go all the way to DFW Airport. So my team, I have a intelligent transportation team, and they cover the traffic signal priority across many roadways. And this is just a quick depiction of the operational improvements that we've been working on. And it's all connected. As already mentioned, you know, running through Wi-Fi. So now we have another security obligation and concern that we need to be always taking a look at. Just mentioned the Silver Line, it will, 60 mile, it's a 60-mile corridor from here. And, but my team, we have the technology for it. So in the planning phase, the cybersecurity piece had to be included. And it was a lengthy planning process to get everyone to the table to really take it serious on how we need to not only for the vehicles itself, but the transit centers, which often are taken for granted on how we have the proper security and the segmentation around that particular network. We have already started putting in 500 kiosks in the region, 500. These kiosks also, another security concern, talking about connectivity and cybersecurity. Eventually, the goal will be to have ridership and customers have an experience where they can just do everything from a digital platform. Oh, went the wrong way. I'm sorry. We did a case study with other public transportation organizations in some cities. We have several smart city initiatives that either are initially taken off or they're in progress. So this is just a depiction on how we have to be alert to the security across our platforms, from city to vehicles, traffic signal. Regionally, we have to be planning for that as well. And the data analytics, how do we protect the customer's data as well? So with connected vehicles considerations, we have to worry about the attack vectors for all vehicles. Not also was just mentioned the cars, but all of these types of vehicles collect data, and we have to protect it. It's going across wireless interfaces, and going into data warehouses, et cetera. But one of the things that we were talking about recently in Ohio at a TransTech conference is the regulatory compliance is not where it needs to be. And that's where we need legislation to help us to get there. So our AV, CV, basically we have a moving IoT environment. And so we have been expressing our thoughts and concerns with vendors on their approach to cybersecurity to help us. And so we have different regulatory compliance regulations like NIST and others. So we have been encouraging, as we call them, our partners out there in private industry to help us with this. So thank you, and that's my contact information.
That was great. Steve, I've got a question for you. A number of the panelists yesterday were asked whether we would be able to maintain our privacy given all the increased data collection and data sharing. However, when we talked last night, you were a lot less optimistic than them. Why?
Okay, yeah, so a guy was up here earlier and called himself the cybersecurity evangelist and was with the Church of the Painful Truth. My industry calls me the guy with the tinfoil hat. But I am a little bit less optimistic about being able to retain our privacy. And the reason for that is because we're a global economy. We're a global community. And in fact, the very charter of this organization is to enable global interaction in an area of trust. We intend to help third world countries to join the rest of us in a cyber robust platform. And it's because of that that I am a little less optimistic about being able to retain our privacy long term. If it was only America and or the U.S. and Canada, I think we would hold on to that. For the CV pilot in Tampa, we've hosted a number of international visitors, and Korea was there a couple of months ago. There were the federal police from Korea was there, some universities that do research, and a couple of government representatives. And when we talked and I presented the cybersecurity challenges and the privacy challenges of doing the connected vehicle, you know, they'd been very engaged. And when I started talking about that, they all just gave me blank stares. And at the end, one of them asked the question, he said, "We don't understand this privacy concern. What is the concern?" And it became very clear that there are many other parts of the world that do not have this expectation of privacy that's inherent in our, you know, constitutional rights. And really, Canada and the US are the only ones that are really holding a firm line on that. Even Europe, who has now the GDPR to stand on for their privacy, and as you pointed out in a session yesterday, don't go to London if you don't want to be filmed. Was that you? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you can opt out. Don't go to London. And so yeah, for that reason, incorporating the rest of the world in, I think we have our challenges. And as we help those parts of the world come into a robust cybersecurity, I think it's incumbent on us to educate them about that expectation of privacy, or we lose it.
Great, thanks, Steve. Jeff, you had a comment?
So I don't want, I don't want to be, you know, pegged with any of that, but yeah, I think there is an opt-in factor. Although, you know, given the fact that there is going to be a lot of headway against this, and I think we talked about this yesterday as well, was you are going to have cultural differences as you go from place to place. I don't think as private industry or as governments, we should take that as the easy answer, as the cop-out. We should challenge ourselves to do everything we possibly can. I think that there are plenty of companies out there that would love to take that as a cop-out. And we just, you know, we as a company, and I think there's a lot of other companies out there that feel the same way, don't accept that. You know, we don't accept that it's a foregone conclusion that you have to give up your privacy to enjoy the benefits of technology.
And, you know, for us, we've started including that aspect in contracts. How we work with third-party vendors, and also how we respond to the public. How we're protecting their data, because it's very important, because they don't have to engage us. So it's basically it's been a public sector core principle we've migrated to how we're protecting the data. So.
Thanks, Julius.
And if I can add just one more thing onto that too, is, and I think Steve did a good job pointing this out, but just to kind of reiterate, when you think of like the cultural differences, so Europe has a very strong privacy culture. It's the exact 180 of the United States, right? The US, well, we'll give Apple all of our information, and you know, I don't want the city of Dallas to see any of it, because God knows, you know, Julius is going to come to my house, and he's going to put a tinfoil hat on me too. So, you know, horrible things are going to happen if the government has it. That's just the way that we feel. That's our culture in the US. And the European culture is exactly the opposite. They don't trust the private company. They trust their governments in a very different way. And so that's something we do have to accept. But again, I think the principles stay the same.
Thanks, Jeff. Julius, we've talked about a number of issues, and are there any further cyber or privacy issues that are special to transportation?
Well, special is, I already mentioned TNCs. Typically, they want data, but they don't want to, in return, reciprocate. It's a big challenge for us. That's one. And then the other in cybersecurity is we're still human. The human factor with cyber across transit. It's a cultural change, big cultural change. I've been in the organization 4 years now, and it was an uphill battle to get to where we are today. And talking to peers across the industry, they're saying the same thing. So for us, we cannot take a break. As soon as you take a break, then the folks sometimes they go backwards. So those two, we have to stay on it. I was mentioning earlier, I'm briefing the board. This is a great opportunity on Tuesday on cybersecurity, and in past, that didn't occur. So now, challenges like that, just getting the word out, being active and making the changes. The other, I would say, is legacy gear that's still in the network, and on the operational technology side as well. That's a major challenge in which we're still fighting.
Great, thanks, Julius. Jeff, you mentioned earlier the 737 MAX software issue. Where do you see software companies fitting in to this new mobility?
So as a software company, I feel like we are just the pinnacle of everything right now. But I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but it is true. There's nothing I think you can find in transportation right now that isn't running on some sort of software. We have, you have everything from, new operating systems that are running within the vehicles, within the transportation systems themselves. I think we're getting the hook here soon, so I'm gonna wrap it up real quick. But basically, look, you look at about 100 million lines of code inside a vehicle today. That's just going to increase as time goes on. Without getting too into it, one of the discussions that I had at the beginning of this month was I was actually at Formula E. Would everybody know what Formula E is? Formula One, you know what Formula One is? Right, yeah. So it's this Formula One with electric cars. And their biggest concern, or the biggest thing they wanted to talk to us about, was some of our AI programs and what we could look at as far as maximizing battery operation, maximizing how the driver is actually interacting with the road, and so on and so forth. So software, I believe, becomes one of the biggest differentiators as we move forward.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And we may have time for one or two questions before Harold kicks us off the stage. They're coming from both sides. Okay. Oh, we do have one question. Can we have one question?
All right, one quick one. So when I think about, when I hear you speak about autonomous cars or connected cars and everything, it's basically similar to my mobile phone, right? It is, except that it's got wheels, it's moving around and doing all kinds of things. And we barely have gotten control over cyber privacy and cybersecurity on the mobile phones. So when you add in the car, do you see that until we get a hold of all of those issues, the launch of the cars into the consumer market will be delayed? Or you would go ahead with the launch anyway and then deal with the issues later on?
Maybe.
Where's the?
I'm not sure I got the whole question, but as I think what you asked, if I don't answer it, that's okay, because nobody else wants to.
I've got a politically correct answer for it.
Okay.
Get done real quick.
Well, go ahead.
Sure.
I may not understand the question.
So to answer your question, as far as it is set right now, the testing process and the validation process for vehicles by NHTSA is not going to change. Cybersecurity is one of those things. It is a recallable item. What the industry is struggling with right now more than anything else is we have safety standards, and there are some security standards built into those safety standards for manufacturing. The challenge is, again, goes back to cybersecurity is not one of those things that you can build. you can just build your way out of it. It's not gonna happen. We can reduce the number, and we are working on several products and solutions to reduce, you know, what that attack surface is gonna look like. But, there is still going to be the availability for somebody to find vulnerabilities within these automobiles. That said, much like if something is engineered inappropriately in an automobile that you have right now, there would be a recall on it. The same type of process would take place. And NHTSA has, actually with the GPAC, NHTSA has already exercised that right and that power.
I'll add to that very quickly. No, yeah, no problem. So to add to that, yes, the recall and the safety mechanism is there. The one key piece, and CAV is now being transitioned to cooperative autonomous. When they take the connected technology, put it into the autonomous vehicle, that's going to get us there for the safety on that side, even with cybersecurity, because we have misbehavior detection and we can revoke the security from an individual car in real time. Where we have to get the rest of it, and that's why there's only a couple of us that come to this representing transportation. The DOTs and the transportation sector at large are under the paradigm that we've been in for years. This is changing. About 15 of those states really get it and are moving in the right direction. But they build a road and they expect it to last 100 years, and the maintenance budget for that is the same. But we go in as a cybersecurity consultant and we tell them, this is what you have to do to protect your system and this is the price tag. Okay, great, I'll get that budgeted. Now I need to come back in 6 months and re-baseline you because, or you're gonna have to sign up for some subscription. There's no buy-in to maintaining a product every few months like we need to do with cybersecurity, because the mindset is still, okay, I built that bridge, in 80 years we'll revisit it.